Welcome to Healing Medicine, formerly the Mindful Healers podcast.
This is the podcast for physicians and healthcare professionals who crave balance and purpose. If you want to rediscover your love for medicine and life, one mindful step at a time, you are in the right place. We are Dr. Jessie Mahoney.
And Dr. Nichang Liang, physicians who bring decades of experience in physician health and wellness and leadership to the wellness conversation. Like so many of you, we felt the exhaustion, the disillusionment, and the weight of a career that demands so much, often at the expense of our own well being.
In this podcast, we explore mindfulness, mindset, and real, sustainable health and well-being strategies.
Not as another task to add to your plate, but as a way to experience medicine and life differently.
Each episode dives into practical strategies, coaching tools, and real conversations to help you feel more present, fulfilled, and in control.
When we are healthy and well, we become powerful agents of change.
If you're ready to break free from exhaustion, cynicism, overwhelm, feeling ineffectual and stuck, and rediscover joy and presence, you are in the right place.
A life and a career that truly fits you await.
Reminder that nothing in this podcast is medical advice. Mindfulness and machines, approaching AI and algorithms with acceptance, mindful curiosity, and some loving amusement. It will fix everything in healthcare. It will replace all our jobs. These are thoughts that we hear about AI frequently. And my thought is that AI is not good or bad or all or none. There's a lot of skepticism, a lot of catastrophizing, a lot of sensationalism, a lot of hope, a lot of devastation about it. And for me, it's been actually a connecting experience, one of moving beyond skepticism. And I have become a lot closer with my sons as a result of AI, and I've gotten a lot of useful information and saved time. I've also learned recently about things called AI hallucinations. And so today we want to explore it, how AI can make human experiences potentially more valuable. How often do you wish you get a real person on the phone after talking to a robot? And recognizing that it is an algorithm, often annoying algorithm, and it has a style that I think is often very obvious. It chooses interesting emojis that you see all over the internet now. The ones it's choosing are the ones you see. And so it's a moment to reflect and be mindful.
So, this episode, we're going to approach AI with mindful curiosity, wonder, loving amusement, and explore the intersection of humanity and technology with groundedness, spaciousness, and some play.
At the outset, let's take a moment just to pause and be present and take a breath or two. And if you want to close your eyes, you can. And if it's not safe, please don't. And just to consider the robots, I like to call them. And the robots have already brought change. There is change all around. The old ways are changing, whether we like it or not. And honoring that we can accept it. We cannot like it. We can be disappointed. We can be scared, sad, angry, worried, excited, hopeful. All the emotions are welcome. Taking a moment to bring your hand to heart and think about the emotions that swirl up when you think about machines and AI. Allowing those emotions, whatever they are, to be present. Noticing them, being aware of them, welcoming them, inviting them, exploring them. Just noticing how you feel when you hear the word AI or ChatGPT or the bots or the robots or the machines. pausing to breathe and pausing to be present with whatever is in you on this topic. Noticing if you have resistance and honoring its existence, letting it be, seeing what else is there, noticing or acknowledging any interest or excitement or desire to learn, potentially letting all of the emotions be there all at once. Taking in another breath and pressing your hand to heart, noticing the humanness of the reaction and the experience of these words, these technologies, and these changes. Taking a moment to honor that. And when you feel complete, opening eyes and lowering your hands, and we'll come back together for a fun conversation, I hope. And funny because as we did that mindfulness, this was supposed to be a fun, lighthearted topic, and yet there's a lot of confusing energy around it. And I think for some, maybe it's not lighthearted. So I will honor that at the beginning and reflect that we are, with intention, choosing a loving and amused approach to it. So even 6 months ago, I was very resistant to AI, very resistant. I thought it was bad and I was worried about it. And, what would happen to creativity and would the robots replace who knows what? And in the last 6 months, my thoughts and feelings and reactions to it have shifted and changed. It did 100% take me acknowledging those feelings though. And these days, I kind of think about AI as something to react against. I like to be a little feisty. And so I think that recognizing that I want to choose my reaction. So in medicine, we react generally. That's what we do, that's what we're taught to do. And in medicine, we are generally taught to sort of approach change with hesitation and skepticism. So, of course, I felt that way at the beginning. And in our society, we also like to catastrophize and sensationalize and be anxious and worry. Is this another problem? What's going to happen? Will things change for the worse? And my thought now is, what if things do change for the better, knowing that it's going to be both? Some things will be worse, some things will be better. But as I have raised 3 young adults, all of whom are somehow involved in this technology, and it seems that maybe there isn't any young adult who's not involved in it in some way, that accepting the reality of this and deciding how I want to show up for it, acknowledging my humanness and my reactions is really how I'm going to choose to move forward. How about you? What's your
So,
relationship?
um, it's a bit love-hate as well, and everything in between. Initially, I also like rolled my eyes when I heard about AI, but then in the tumultuous times that we're living in politically, I decided to try it to help me craft a letter to my congresswoman. And to my surprise, it was really quite elegant and eloquent. Like I put in the bullet points of what I wanted the letter to convey, and the AI basically strung it all together with cohesion and compassion.
Mhm.
So I was actually quite pleasantly surprised. And then I got curious about hearing about AI in clinic rooms where the software would listen, quote unquote, while you were talking to the patient, and then it would craft an entire progress note for you, poof, like at the end of the clinic visit. And I've heard mixed reactions and mixed reviews of such
Mhm.
programming software. I have yet to implement that in my own clinic, and I think we're a ways off from that because there are privacy issues that we need to navigate as well. So there is a spark of hope in that, wow, like this particular technology could potentially help me spend more time with my patients in a way that I want to be spending time, which would be like making more eye contact and actually talking to them as opposed to touch typing at the same time as talking to them. But then that tiny inkling of fear that you had mentioned with regarding the replacement of actual physicians.
Mhm.
But then day to day, when I'm seeing my patients, I'm realizing the nuances of putting all of the data that is readily available to us and then intertwining it with empathy and compassion, the human touch, also the humanity of connection, like the non medical stuff that my patients and I connect about, is all part of a healing encounter. And that is where I don't think AI is going to be able to artificially create, frankly. So I think it would really be hard for AI to be able to do all of that um, in general. And so I feel a bit relieved on my own for my own observations and judgments for that. I will say though, on the radiology side of things, I've heard wonderful things about the AI algorithms that are programmed to help radiologists in their reads of imaging studies, like for instance in breast imaging. So that I'm looking forward to learning more about and how that increases potentially sensitivity and specificity. I think we shall have to see.
Mm.
On the lighter aspect of things, I've had fun creating different graphic designs, like myself as a doll with all my accessories,
Mhm.
like a dragon boat paddle, a yoga mat. I'm sitting in basically crisscross applesauce sukhasana and wearing my white coat and stethoscope around my neck as a doll. So that was a pretty fun picture to help AI create. But then when I put in some requests for a dragon boat, uh, I don't really know what happened, but it ended up attaching the dragon head of the boat backwards. So it ended up having the dragon actually like looking at the paddlers, which I found to be quite amusing uh,
Slash scary.
and scary. And also it came up with really fun logos. So I go on a informal retreat to Idlewild each year with a group of local moms, and we have named ourselves the Wisdom Circle,
Mm.
but we wanted to add more to it. And so AI helped us come up with the logo for this name, the Manzanita Wisdom Circle, Goddesses of the Waxing Gibbous Stellar J Seekers. And so it was pretty fun to see what AI came up with for a logo for that.
It's so interesting because I've often heard that, like, the one thing that it doesn't do is creativity, and yet I have seen it come up with a lot of fun ideas. And so it's both, right? Again, I think it's the idea of holding it all at once. And we'll talk in a bit about showing up with mindful curiosity, but I think it's one of these things we don't know yet. It's almost, invited again by the mindfulness hands wide open. I think we want to push it away, or and maybe the older generation wants to push it away, and the younger generation, I see my children grasping onto it as everything, right? And there's got to be, I'm just going to be hands wide open and see. And to reflect a moment that recently I asked it about this podcast, because I was trying to figure out, often you're asked to explain what the podcast is about, and we did all this rebranding, and I forget what incentivized me to do this, but I asked it what it knew about this podcast. And I thought it was super cool to see what it knew. And I followed up by what was great about the podcast. And so this is a bit of the lesson that it's very much dependent on your input. I didn't ask it initially what we could improve, though I did eventually ask that question. And I think it's really responding to the input that you give it. But I had great fun asking it about this podcast, and it had a lot of clarity and noticed things that I 100% agreed with, but wouldn't have come up with on my own. And so that part was really helpful, not just in being able to better explain and to pick and choose the parts that felt good, but also as positive feedback. And I loved hearing where we outshine other podcasts, or, and whether or not it's a value or not. ChatGPT thinks we're original and we're aligned, and we're not boring. It's fascinating to me. And this idea, this was my favorite. We're positioned at the intersection of medicine, mindfulness, and meaning. Not many podcasts can claim that space so gracefully. And maybe what we're having here is a conversation about machines, mindfulness, and meaning. And hopefully it's graceful. So I think it's really how we decide to relate to it. We've actually had a number of podcasts here about change your relationship with, and maybe it's not so much here changing your relationship, but developing an intentional relationship. Just like many of us have had to develop an intentional relationship with our technology and an intentional relationship with our children and our mothers and our cell phones and all of those and our work, that fits into that category. So AI, I think, in my experience, and I'm told from my AI much more fluent sons, that it's really 100% dependent on the input that you put in. And you can, ask questions, very loose, free form questions, or you can ask very specific questions. You can actually train it by feeding it other things, or things that are important to you, or things that you value, or tell it what style you want it to write in. It is fascinating. And so I think it's a mirror that's reflecting how we engage with it. And the reason I actually love this is that I think that our world is also a mirror of how we engage with it. And so coaching helps you kind of see, how are you engaging with things? And so if I think about engaging with AI in that same way, how do I want to engage with it? How am I engaging with it? When I get things back that I really don't like, and that's very often, I I can learn from how I'm engaging in it. And when I change how I show up, whether it be for AI or my husband or my children or my mother or my job or whatever challenge I might face in a particular day, you get a different output. And it's a beautiful way of seeing that and appreciating that. So if you bring rigidity, you get rigidity back from AI. If you bring curiosity and kindness, you get more of that. And in fact, my much more AI fluent sons tell me that, like, AI interprets the style in which you ask your question. So if you want like nice answers, you should ask nice questions. If you ask in curt language, you get curt language back. I was like, wow, I had no idea. So I'm really nice to AI, and I smile and think like I'm being really nice to a robot, but it's curating your experience. And so why not curate a nice, healthy relationship with I call them the robots. They're like my friends. And so I think this invitation that we're offering today to show up with loving amusement or kindness or curiosity or playfulness or open-heartedness, that we can discover new things. And all of us in medicine are lifelong learners. And so could this just be like learning a new language? It doesn't mean we have to use it either, or learning about a new culture, and you can decide how you want to engage in it. I hear so often that we can't decide because we're told, but I think even in your exam room, you can decide how you want to engage with it, or even in your business or with whatever you're doing, you can choose. You can go to the auto checkout line or the person checkout line. Now, maybe there won't be any people checkout lines in the future. And again, that's probably out of our control. So we can choose how we want to engage in that or choose a different store.
I know that I know that AI has been accused of being sexist and racist. So it harkens back to your statement about AI being a reflection of society and a mirror. So
Yeah.
that's sad, but hopefully, with enough of the world putting in kind and inclusive inputs, we can slant and make AI more objective and inclusive as opposed to uh, exclusionary and sexist and racist.
Yeah, and I think it's that's the key thing is to recognize that it's a reflection of our world. And sadly, that is our world. And so how and I don't know this yet. I'm like, I'm going to ask my kids about this. How can you influence it? And I don't know if it's a volume thing or I think to me this is where the personal input, right? It's like an interaction in a relationship so that we need to recognize that it has that tendencies and it has the tendencies of the entire world, which is actually there are very few things that have that, where we get input from a world of data and a world of knowledge as opposed to um, a smaller subsegment. And as it gets better and better, presumably there'll be more. But I think we can't take the output just at like, oh, this is the truth, because it's not. I learned from someone at a retreat about, she called it hallucinations, which as a medical provider, I really, really like that word, that AI sometimes interprets things in ways that literally are hallucinations that make no sense. And it puts some things together and says there's a study on this. And it's not a purposeful lying, it's interpreting some data in some way. And so this is where humans still matter because you shouldn't take everything and anything at face value, and we tend to interpret things in these very specific ways. It reminds me of receiving an email from someone and how you interpret it may or may not be at all how they intended it to come. And so this is where it is really important to pause and decide how you want to engage, how you want to respond, whether you believe it, um, and seeing the lens by which that person and or the computer might be seeing the world. Maybe there are going to be some solutions there to that. Maybe somehow it can be trained to not be. I don't know because I'm not a computer programmer, but I do believe these people are pretty whiz at this stuff. And so if someone with the right training and background who was really thoughtful and knowledgeable, and maybe we don't even have that knowledge in our society yet, but could figure out how to train something that took out all biases. Wouldn't that be cool?
Yes, that would be very cool.
This is my hope and wonder.
So we can choose to ask helpful questions regarding our relationship with AI. This is bringing in our mindful curiosity. So, what if you asked what else might be possible with this tool? What if you saw AI as a creative collaborator instead of a competitor? And what might it teach you about your mind, your biases, and your beliefs?
That last question is really exciting, actually. I haven't thought about it in this realm, and I'm sure that there are people who have thought about it. My other questions might be, what does it make easier? It is being utilized in medicine and in hiring and in almost every sector to make some things easier. And what is it good at? What can it summarize or save time? What can it make time for? Recognizing that it also takes time. I think it also begs the question with AI is, where do humans still offer more? And my thinking here is it actually makes the in-person experiences that we can create and curate even more important, and the human interaction experiences. and the art museums, and sort of the sensorial experience is very different when you see it on a screen as opposed to when you're in a room with a piece of art, or when you see nature on a screen and you're in a room. Now, sometimes we can't travel, and so it brings us things that we couldn't do otherwise. But I think this idea of really being curious and deciding what questions we want to ask it directly, and what questions we want to ask about it, and remembering something we talk about in this podcast a lot. And there's actually a whole episode on asking helpful questions, but ask helpful questions. We tend to ask the unhelpful questions. What's it going to take away? What jobs are going to go away? How are we going to suffer? Where's it going to make a mistake? As opposed to these, I would say, are questions we just stated were helpful. What might be possible? What if it's a collaborator? And so thinking about things that way, what is it easier? What does it make time for? Could be really a different relational experience. I also like this concept of wonder, and the thoughts about biases and isms is a wonderful way to, like, what if we could have it help us with that? That to me is a wonder experience. And we know physiologically that wonder is really helpful. It's healing. It helps balance your nervous system. It activates your creativity and your helps you solve complex problems. And so I think AI is actually a place we could approach with wonder if we let go of our resistance. And for me, there's always a little bit of a balance. But this idea that there is a machine who could do this is actually a wondrous thing. Like, from when you and I grew up, there weren't even cell phones. So I know that the younger generation has no idea what we're talking about, but it's pretty wondrous that something like this can happen. And so can we approach it from that place of wonder? And we might be able to find ways that it can add to the beauty of the world, is my hope when we show up with wonder. Similarly, showing up with loving amusement, I think that beginner's mind, or and childlike wonder, kind of, that fits to me in that loving category. And so staying out of judgment. And I still, every time I get something back from AI, I judge it. Was it good? Was it bad? Does it even know? And then I will say 75% of the time I get mad at it and I just go start over. But I'm always thinking, well, maybe I should see. And so for me, it's like exploring something, and it doesn't have to be the answers. And I certainly don't want it to take the place of things that I love doing, like writing. And I think there's this pressure out there of, like, it has to, or it's supposed to, or you're wasting your time. And I think this is the bringing the mindfulness to it. What is the value of time? How do you want to spend your time? And again, coming back to this loving, kind amusement, that it is a robot. I like to say, what do the robots think? I have asked it actually to, like, write a yoga class in the style of Jessie Mahoney, MD. It doesn't know me. I'm like, nope, you don't get that. But it did know our podcast. And so part of it is just fun, right? I'm like, oh, no, I would never teach that. And that makes you laugh. But it could also be something to react against. Well, what would I teach? Or, like, they got that wrong because I like X. And so again, just relating to it and letting it be a place to experiment and try things out. I don't know. Again, it's bringing me back to that playfulness and fun. Eh, I know it is complex, and I know that there are a lot of forces in there that are probably not there for good, and there's certainly a lot of money in it. But can I just experiment and be more open to it? I'm reminded when texting first came, I was also equally resistant, and I had all kinds of rules about how my kids could text. And now I love it. It's like, exactly, I communicate with my kids way more often than I would ever if we just had phones, like, that you could talk on, is what I mean. Uh, and so I do really think this idea of being lovingly amused with what it's good at, what it's not good at, what it allows you to do. I'm going to try to set my intention to have a relationship of loving amusement and mindful curiosity. I think it's fun.
Yeah, mindfulness is a way forward for your relationship with machines and AI in general. So, hopefully, this podcast is encouraging you to not fear AI, but rather to recognize your own values in being a human, that it can't replace your own personal discernment, wisdom, or connection with self and others. So you can use it to your advantage and let it serve as a catalyst for creativity and even deeper presence and awareness.
And our invitation of approaching it with mindfulness, just recognizing that mindfulness is really about humanity. And no matter how the tools, advance the tools become, what our humanness allows us to choose how we engage with it. And you get to choose some of those potentially philosophic approaches or intentions or attitudes of mindfulness that we talk about often here: patience, love, kindness, compassion, curiosity, presence, all the things.
AI continues to allow us to be lifelong learners, lifelong students. Yet another thing to learn about, should you choose.
Mindfully, of course. So I hope we've offered thoughts about how you can mindfully have a relationship with the machines. And we will offer a mindful moment on machines and your relationship with them after the sound of the singing bowl. We would love it if you would leave us some reviews and comments on the machines because they help other people find us through the algorithm. And we would love to share our style and message farther and wider in our voices as we interact with the machines and you listen to us on machines. So we hope you have a beautiful day. And with that, we would also love to interact with you in person because while we love our machines, we also love people. So reach out to have us come and talk to you, do workshops, write articles. And if you are interested in coaching or a retreat, you know where to find us. We will see you next week.
Thank you for joining us. Be sure to stay on after the sound of the singing bowl for our mindful moment offering to practice.
Please check the show notes for additional resources and insights, and please explore our other episodes.
If our message resonates, we'd love to connect further. Please share this podcast with colleagues, friends, and family members. And remember, when you work with us, you don't just consume information, you create real change.
We offer coaching, mindfulness experiences, workshops, retreats, and talks. Visit healingmedicinepodcast.com to learn more.
Please note the content of this podcast is not medical or life advice. Always participate in our mindful moments safely.